Hello everyone, it is Racquet here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Going to be doing something a little bit different out of my own territory, I suppose, and just giving my brief review of a little bit of the SKT versus G2 and the FPX versus IG matches, and what I think will happen into the grand final. This isn't going to be the most advanced analysis. My professional field previously was Overwatch, and this is just something coming from a very casual fan and a viewer of League of Legends. So, yeah, let's get straight into it. So, the first game that I wanted to talk about for a little bit is IG versus FPX. I think for majority of this game, it probably wasn't the most compelling to watch because just of the amount of mistakes you saw from IG especially. And I felt like the Shy was playing so well that the whole tournament that he overreached in a lot of those last fights. It is not very indicative of how the Shy is as a player. I just think without him in this scenario, they probably wouldn't be able to reach the semi-finals in the first place. He did a massive job along with Rookie, especially to carry them through early on, and this is just him, I believe, thinking he has to do a lot more than what he had to. With especially in game 4, it was very, very winnable, and for the past 3 fights, like they were easily within IG's range to win the game, right? Um, and the problem is with IG, I honestly don't think they were the team deserving to win this semi-final, and they weren't deserving to get into the grand final. And the thing that makes it look a little bit more sus, in my opinion, on the FPX side is because I felt like a lot of what IG were doing, or the FPX's reactions, they were great, but it was because IG were doing really, really, really dumb stuff sometimes. Like, it is noted as well, like I've been saying stuff about the Shy, like Yimgoon played very, very well at series, probably his best series in the World Championship so far. It was probably the biggest step up, I feel. But it felt so misguided, IG. And especially in a lot of these drafts, they just let Doinb just wreck around, and like I don't think you give him Nautilus for the majority of those matches, especially after him picking them through all of those drafts. The thing is, right? Um, Maybe IG thought they had like a plan for it, but I feel like Doinb does have a very versatile champion pool, especially with what he's played in China. And obviously they would know this IG, right? But I feel like in that specific series he was being very influential, um, and it just really was unfortunate because it wasn't even, in my opinion, a result of FPX being overly proactive. It was IG making mistakes and FPX capitalizing on them. Like you look at several situations where you had Doinb on the Rumble, and you'd see the opposing team in IG just funnel through the jungle constantly, and you have Kiana to worry about, you have Nautilus to worry about, you have a Rumble to worry about. Like this is the absolute dream team to fight in the jungle, and IG managed to funnel themselves in there every single time. And as a result of them just being, I don't know what it was, greedy, uh, Fire Plus just ran them down majority of the time. Um, I felt like a lot of the players on FPX really did step up though. Like as I said, Gimgoon's actually the probably biggest one for me, doing so well up against the Shy. And Doinb's Doinb. No one can replicate his style. But yeah, it was a very, very great series, and I feel like coming into the grand final, which we'll talk about later, that Tien shouldn't be given that Kiana whatsoever. He's a really, really good jungler, and certainly a candidate for, I think, MVP possibly. I don't want to talk about this series too much because, as I said, I feel like it's a little bit of a disservice, sorry, uh, for FPX because IG did throw several of their leads, or not even the leads that they gathered. Like they were just doing ridiculously dumb things, and FPX were like, okay, yeah, we'll take this fight. Like they just looked completely puzzled, and it was a little bit awkward. I think that series, it was very jam packed. There was a lot of action fights, but I felt like there were a lot of mistakes. Okay, enough about that one. We'll go into the G2 versus SKT series. So this stylistically is a pretty interesting matchup. Let me just take a sip of my Racquet mug. Now, the thing that actually impressed me the most about this series was the side lane control that G2 possessed. Um, and like the stylistic uh, clash that we had between both of these people, right? G2 aren't the fastest in the early game, but they do put enough pressure uh, in terms of wave control and roaming that it makes you think about the transition coming into mid lane, which is when usually they do come on mid game. Sorry, when they do come online. And SKT actually, they've been wanting to be more aggressive, but usually they still like are having these longer games, right? And they've been trying to play through objectives in order to get their win, even though, as we saw in that series, with the percentages where they got Baron, they actually ended up losing the game. And in terms of a lot of the world's teams, are actually one of the worst performing in terms of gathering the Baron and trying to push through the lead, right? And it was a really interesting style clash, because I even felt like before coming into this matchup that it was going to favor G2. I feel like SKT are an extremely consistent team, but that actually works against them for this, in a sense that you know exactly what you're going to get from SKT, um, and I feel like G2's sporadic behavior and the fact that they can pull it off in a best of five series consistently is really, really difficult to deal with, right? It's not like you're up against Unicorns of Love like 3 years ago and they pull out like a TF jungle pick and you don't know what to do with it. It's like G2 consistently have wide arrays of champion pools throughout every single lane, that it makes it nearly impossible to draft against them, right? Like when they had the Gragas, Syndra, Yasuo, I believe, in, was that game three? I forgot which game it was. And they just outdrafted SKT so much because they could just float those pick and they didn't need to like decide where any of them would go. And if SKT decided to, like, it couldn't ban them out, right? Because they just could go anywhere they wanted. Um, and yeah, I mean, G2 are really, really selfless, I feel, as well. Like, because they are, like, without a doubt, probably the strongest Western team ever. And the fact that they are ridiculously stacked to the brim, everyone has had their time to carry, and they still, like, can come through with outstanding teamwork, is really impressive to me. And, uh, like, oh, it's pretty exciting, like, if you're a Western fan, right? Um, and the upper advantage I always felt like that was throughout this series was going to be the bot lane. Um, Not exactly because there's a huge mechanical difference, but it's because of the champion pool difference. Having a AD carry that can play mages, can play the Yasuo at a higher level. Well, did sort of fit a little bit at the start, but Perks did pick it up towards the end. Just having a threat of having so many champions you can flex between bottom lane and a best of five series, where you can hover it around mid too. I mean the Syndra as well. Uh, like, it is ridiculously difficult to deal with, and the amount of macro play involved with this game is phenomenal too. Like when uh, Caps is using Realm Warp to reset waves to take towers. Like, this is ridiculously advanced here by G2. The fact that, was it the first or the second game where they were just constantly pressuring the bot side with Ryze, while SKT were going for Baron, and it's like the amount of objectives that they're trading for this Baron, especially against SKT. It's like SKT have actually been very, very slow with Baron, and they use their time to it to sort of like farm their way up. And G2 were like, okay, we're going to let you do this, and we're just going to continuously pressure the waves, and while you're doing that, we're just going to get a turret in the meantime, right? Because they were just so like quick to react to those type of things. And for the most part, even when SKT did have those leads, G2 were playing absolutely like nearly perfectly to what they had in their team compositions and spreading out, using their realm warps to utilize objectives and getting the turret plating, which is why G2 are very good, I believe, in this sort of instance, is because they've accelerated, or they know how to accelerate the game a lot better than what a lot of other teams do, especially this slower Korean style, where they sort of focus around objectives and try to choke you out. G2 are just a team that wants to gather all those turret platings and get a bunch of gold through them, and then just try to push the advantage through side lanes, and then try and find you out in a skirmish, right? And win that way. So G2 are a fantastic team to watch. And I suppose the good thing is, like, this isn't the end for Korea, I believe. Like, don't forget, Griffin, Damwon, and like half of SKT are basically all rookies, right? Like players who are very new to the scene. So I expect like next year they'll probably come hit harder, but they probably need to adapt to this more fast style if they want to start getting into the rhythm. Because I know like Korean culture, Japanese cultures like this as well, is they don't like to copy other cultures even if it is like better. They want to make sure that what they have on their own is sort of well structured enough so they can, build themselves. They're very prideful. But yeah, either way, so let's get back into the grand final. But yeah, congrats to G2. They did a good job here. SKT like did have some pretty silly mistakes here as well. Actually, like Faker on the Kiana. Like I love Faker, but it looked like he had very minimal practice on that champion. And that last game was an absolute disaster where like they were using the Olaf to run at him basically throughout these fights and zoned him, had to use like flash to get over the wall to attempt to even get to the back line, and by then he was like a quarter health twice. So yeah, it was a bit of a not a very good performance for Faker, unfortunately, but you know, um, the old god will come back sometime. And the Mata throwback as well, like his last game against G2. It's a way to get out, right? But yeah, grand final. Who's going to win this? Now, this is actually quite interesting because Wonder has been probably the shakiest part of G2 in my opinion. Like, like famously in the split before, like when carry champions were in the meta, he was very strong. Like Gimgoon has been playing like this very well, sort of like the like Dyrus like Haunter type top lane, where he isn't dying as much and he's actually getting ahead on certain matchups as well and pushing them. Even winning matchups that he's not supposed to, like the Renekton versus Quinn one, which was quite impressive. Um, so he could actually be a wild card in this series. I know it sounds weird, but it is very well possible. For both of these teams, people are saying draft is going to be very important. I do agree with that to a certain extent. But both of these teams actually have very flexible champion pools. Like, if you think about FPX's identity, like most of it does go through Dwayne B, right? It's like you ban his Nautilus, he probably has the Scion and the Kled to fall back to. Are you going to ban Scion and Kled? No, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm honestly not much of a fan of Scion as a champion. I think he's pretty weak. But Kled, I think, in mid lane could actually be quite a good pickup for them. And you're pretty much going to have to pick Ryze or ban him against Doinby. He is magical on that champion. Those are where sort of FPX's fire comes from. Support's been quite good as well. And if Kai'Sa is in this series, WX can get in and perform quite well. I feel like if G2 do get the Zarya, like that probably seems to be a power pick for them. I would probably ban Zarya if I were FPX against G2 because they just seem to be so ridiculously strong with that champion a lot of the time. Um, but overall, I feel like this is actually going to be a very tight series or a very one-sided series. In that, I think FPX can actually match up better against G2 than what SKT have shown us, because as good as SKT are, they're very very slow, and with a fast tempo based team like G2, it sort of looks like they're rolling over and dying, where FPX are going to be forcing a lot more things, and this means that with their aggression, they're actually going to be like in these coin flip scenarios where if they end up getting these advantages, they will push it very very hard. They're a snowbally team, right? I feel like FPX's sort of aggression, it is controlled aggression. I feel like some of the time too, it's not like they're absolutely bloodthirsty and they're going for all these random kills. Um, they do know what they're doing, and that's why they are in the grand finals of the World Championships. I feel like though G2 do have the upper hand. Um, Overall, they just seem like the more complete team to me. Like both of these teams actually probably have the strongest drafts in the tournament. I think Fnatic can also make an argument for that too, in terms of like the champions that everyone can pick and how they can fool around in the draft phase. Uh, and it's pretty much enabled through the mid lane for both of these teams, right? How flexible they are, and more so for G2, the bot lane, with how they can mix and match certain champions, and with the Gragas Yasuo, with the Syndra, they can pull out because, of course, form a mid lane in the G2 bot lane, so you're always going to get that sort of at the back of your mind. I feel like the jungle matchup is actually going to be very difficult as well. I think Tien's probably been the best performing jungler in the tournament, debatably. Mainly because he's a person who can actually pilot the Qiyana. I expect G2 to probably permaban Qiyana during this whole series because their performances on it weren't really impressive unless they're looking to train it up, perhaps. But yeah, I feel like you're definitely going to have Qiyana banned. Ryze is going to be a priority pick for both of these teams. So whoever has the first pick, that could be very one that they're looking to pick up. And in these wacky matchups that can be presented in mid, for example, like the Nautilus, it's actually not too bad for Ryze because you can just wave clear and just like move out. Like if like they want to trade like the Nautilus for the Ryze or whatever, it's not a bad scenario for G2 in that, because I mean G2 would probably be a team that would be preparing for some of this stuff, but I don't feel like they need to be doing that. It's going to be quite a good series, I feel. I'm going to give it to G2 3-1. They seem like the powerhouse of the tournament, and I don't know. I just have like that gut feeling, Doinb is going to be the huge wild card, I believe, because a lot of people have been underrating him coming into this tournament. And every time you underrate Doinb, he seems to just come out of nowhere and just does well with all these champions that no one ever plays against. How can you have scrim time against a bunch of Rumble, Sion, like Nautilus? Like nobody plays those champions in scrims, right? And it sets TN so well because of these CC mid laners, and they can just couple up and attempt to get picks that way. And it's going to force, the jungle on G2 side to be like a little bit more cautious on the way that they're trying to approach a lot of these fights. So that'll probably be FPX's win condition, their duo between the jungle and the mid. But I feel like G2 probably have the bigger package when it comes to this. Gimgoon as well could actually be a decent player coming into this and trying to capitalize on Wonder. But otherwise, I feel like G2 have the bigger champion pools all round. And they probably will take out this series. So yeah, that's going to be my prediction. 3-1 for G2. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this, I can do more of this stuff. Wasn't the most advanced analysis in the world, once again. I'm not going to blow my own horn or anything and pretend like I know a bunch about the game. That's my just basic understanding. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. Take care, and good night. Say something wrong, how can I talking on the phone, and nobody be the door, and nobody be the door.